Hey guys, AscendantGod here with Raid Shadow Legends, going to be doing a mastery build guide for the arena. If you're looking for one for the clan boss, that is a separate video. You're going to want a different build. This one here is exclusively for the masteries for arena. Alright, now one thing to note, no, I don't have all of them checked off yet. I am going to give you a full guide. I didn't want to check all of them off on my main account because number one, I am farming masteries on my main account. This is actually a backup account. Doing that with Bluestacks. If you don't know how to run multiple accounts of Bluestacks, I got another video on that. That is a great program. I can show you how to walk through that. But anyway, this is about masteries. So the reason I didn't have all these checked off because I didn't want you just pausing the video and just going, oh, these are all the masteries I need, because depending on the champion, you're going to want different masteries. So we're going to cover each tier, each branch, one by one, and go over what is suitable for most champions and the alternatives and why you would potentially want them. So this is the point in time where if you don't have it already, you're going to want to grab a pen and piece of paper so you can take notes here, because at the end you are going to get a list. It's just we're going to go down this tier by tier so that you understand why you would want to choose certain things. All right, so go ahead and get that pen and paper. I'm going to assume that you got it by now. We're going to go ahead and get started on the offense branch. Now, I'm going to let you know right now, when it comes to arena, we're going to be focusing mostly on the offense and defense branch for arena. All right, and if you don't know how the masteries work at all yet, you get to pick one from the first tier of the branches on each one. So you get to choose one from one branch, one from another branch, and then you get to pick three altogether for the next four branches, and then the very last one you get to choose one. All right, and that the reason it has a 6 and a star here, for in case you don't know, you actually need to be at rank 6 in order to be able to fill this last one. He's only at rank 5 right now at level 50, so he can't. I'd need to rank him up one more in order to be able to get the final mastery. All right, but we're going to assume that you have rank 6. If not, at least just take the notes down for when you are, and we're going to get started from there. So first branch here, offense. All right, got two choices. The one that you're going to typically pick the majority of the time here is Blade Disciple. It's attack plus 75. All right, it's a good solid boost in attack, of course going to do more damage to the opponents. All right, the only times you would want this one, this is deadly precision, crit rate plus 5%. This would only be suitable for champions that, say, benefit from crit explicitly. Otherwise, if you don't have anything where, say, they have a skill where if they crit, it gives them some kind of bonus or a buff or something like that, and you feel that bonus is pretty decent, then you could consider going with the crit rate. Otherwise, typically with most champions, you're going to go with this attack Blade Disciple. It's a solid attack plus 75. All right, moving down the line here on tier 2. First one, not going to happen. Increased damage inflicted by 5% when attacking with full hit points. This one you're really not going to use much. You could use it if you know you have a champion that's really, really fast, has a lot of speed on them. You have the speed aura for arena, you know, then possibly. But for the most part, it's only a 5% boost. That's not that much for arena. It's really not worth it. This one here is definitely better. Keen Strike, crit damage plus 10%. All right, that's a nice solid amount of extra crit damage down the line in the game. You're going to end up with quite a bit of crit rate once you have your banners and your rings and those kind of things that you probably don't have at this point yet. So crit rate is a good solid one out of this choices. This one here, all right, you also have this Shield Breaker, increases damage inflicted to targets under shield buffs by 25%. This one can be pretty decent as well. All right, so I could tell you right now, as far as this option, okay, I'm going to give you options from each tier down the line, first offense and then defense. Now, we're going to cover some over here as well, and there is two options over here that can be decent on this tier. Keep in mind, though, that if you feel this option is better than the second option over here, go with this one, because this one isn't that bad. If they have shields, it's going to give an extra 25% when they're under those shields. That can come in handy, but crit damage is the priority here. So if you're only going to get one over on this branch and you're going to get two on this one, choose this crit damage 90% of the time. All right, unless the other I mean, there could be some exceptions to this, but for the most part, shields is a gamble. Are they going to have shields or are they not? Crit damage is a guarantee where you're always going to find that useful in any encounter. All right, last one here you're not going to use. Increased damage inflicted by 5% when attacking with 50% hit points or less. The thing is in Arena, people tend to die really quickly. It's not that often that you're going to be under 50% for a long time. That would be something for very select few champions. So for the most part, you're going to be going with this one here, the Keen Strike. If anything, if you want a secondary one, possibly Shield Breaker. All right, moving down to the third tier here. This one, again, is a no. Increased damage inflicted to targets with less than 40% hit points by 8%. Not usually worthwhile, because the thing is that a lot of times the rounds only last 1 or 2 times, and a lot of times people will get one shot in Arena. So something like that doesn't really make sense. This one here, potentially, it's really the best one you have on this tier over here usually, where it heals by 5% of damage inflicted when attacking with 50% hit points or less. All right, so it's not a lot of healing, but the thing is there isn't really any great choice over on this tier, and you're going to have to pick one. So usually that one's the best bet. You got Whirlwind of Death here. This is situational. Increases speed by 6 for each enemy killed by this champion. Stacks across each round up to 18 speed. All right, this one's very situational. If you know you have one really strong champion, maybe it's a legendary, and you don't have any other strong legendaries, so you know they're the one who tends to kill, and they last for a while, this one might make sense. But otherwise, for the most part, no. Ruthless Ambush, increased damage inflicted by 8% for the first hit on each enemy. Again, this one's very situational. In order to get this one, see, one thing to keep in mind too is each time you get a skill, you have to get one that is adjacent in the 3 below it. So see, this one right here, when I have this option, I can only choose the 2 below it, either straight down to the straight to the right, straight to the left, has to be adjacent. So in order to get this one, you would have needed to choose this, which you may not. But if you do, it's an okay one if you have a champion where, again, like I mentioned earlier, has really good speed. They tend to do the first attack every time, and you get an extra 8%, especially if it's an AoE attack. Then, the first hit on each enemy, they're going to get 4 hits. That's going to be, 32% basically bonus between the 4 that you're going to AoE. So it's possible. For the most part, though, you're going to go for this one here, Life Drinker. That's usually the best option. Moving down the line. Bring It Down. This one here is worthless. We're not even going to cover it. This is for a clan boss. We're not doing clan boss again. This is an arena build. So, next one down the line. All right, Wrath of the Slain. Increases damage inflicted by 5% for each dead ally. Stacks up to 10%. This one here is a pretty good, pretty solid one. It's not a huge boost, but the thing is if you have a champion that you know is going to last, like a support champion with a lot of hit points or defense or something along those lines, of a champion that you know is hard to take down, then it would be a good option. And yes, that is Thunder and Lightning that you heard in the background there. So, and I'm not even going to edit that out because thunderstorms are awesome. All right, so moving along here. Third one. Cycle of Violence has a 30% chance of decreasing the cooldown of a random skill by 1 turn if the damage inflicted by a skill exceeds 30% of the target's max hit points. Occurs once per turn. Alright, this is another one that is actually pretty good, okay, because if you have a champion that is a glass cannon, or if you have a champion that you know hits pretty hard, then yeah, you definitely want to go with this one. This one would actually be even preferable over the previous one here, the Wrath of the Slain, because this one here is going to decrease the cooldown of a random skill by 1 turn. That's pretty solid. All right, so it's definitely something to think about. If you have a champion that hits hard, it'd probably be for attack champions or maybe a defense champion that hits hard. Okay, the last one here is again another one of those that's situational. Opportunist increases damage inflicted to targets with stun, sleep, or freeze debuffs by 12%. This one can be really strong if you have a champion that places stun, sleep, or freeze debuffs on the enemies. If you don't have somebody who does that as an AoE, they're not going to be doing it a whole lot. That one really doesn't make any sense. All right, moving down the line here. This is, again, another one, methodical. Not going to be using this one. This one tends to be for clan boss. All right, the arena fights usually don't last very long, so it doesn't make sense to stack this methodical up. Okay, this one, however, does. Kill streak. Increases damage inflicted by 6% in the arena and 3% in all other locations for each enemy killed by this champion in battle. Stacks across each round up to 12%. All right, so this one could make sense for your champions that you know are going to survive. If you have somebody who's kind of expendable, you know they don't last long in the fights, this one may not make sense, but otherwise, kill streak is a pretty solid bet. Now, the next one here is Blood Shield. This one places a shield buff on this champion for 1 turn when this champion kills an enemy. Value of the shield is equal to 15% of this champion's max hit points. Occurs once per turn. All right. Blood Shield is another one that's really, really good. If you're only going to pick one from this tier, I would say for the most part, Blood Shield, if you have a champion that you know is going to be able to take out the opponent. Again, one that does a decent amount of damage, not a healer, not defense, somebody who's offensive and hits hard. This is great. You get a shield on them. It protects them. All right. So that's definitely a good go-to on this tier as well. Last one here. Stoked to Fury, no. Increases damage inflicted by 4% for each debuff on this champion, stacks up to 12%. It's too situational. Doesn't make sense. Not going to bother with that one. All right. Last tier here, and typically when it comes to the last one, like I said, you can only pick one. Usually you're going to pick one of these two right here, which is War Master right here or Giant Slayer right here. All right. Reason being is these are so useful in other encounters in the game that you really don't want to pass them up. Unless you have a champion that you know for sure you are never going to use anywhere but in arena, you want to get either War Master or Giant Slayer. Reason being, has a 60% chance of inflicting bonus damage when attacking. Bonus damage is equal to 10% of the target champion's max hit points, or 4% of the target's max hit points when attacking bosses. 4% of the max hit points of a boss is huge when you have a clan boss, especially when you start getting up into the harder levels and brutal and nightmare and all of that. Okay, so this can be really, really powerful. And even in arena, 10% of their hit points every once in a while is not huge, but it can make a big difference. Okay, especially when you're compiling it with all these other bonuses. All right, so you got the War Master here. Giant Slayer is a little bit different. With Giant Slayer, it has a 30% chance of inflicting bonus damage when attacking. Very similar, slightly less, 7.5 instead of 10%, all right? But it's a similar concept to War Master, all right? And I'm going to make this really simple rather than going through all of this in the details, because the question comes down to, well, do I want War Master or do I want Giant Slayer, all right? Easiest way to answer this, rather than getting into the details, this one here, War Master, is going to be for champions that tend to hit 2 times or less on average. All right. As far as Giant Slayer, this one is going to be for champions that tend to hit more frequently. So if your champion tends to have an average of 3 hits or more per turn, which is usually just 3 or 4 with champions, then you would go with Giant Slayer. Since this is for arena, and since most of the time in arena you're going to be doing your A2 and your A3, even if your A1 has 3 or 4 attacks, most likely you're not going to have multiple different attacks that have 3 or 4 attacks. So again, if it comes down to that, you know you're not going to use this champion in much of anything other than arena, your best bet is probably going to be War Master. If you think you might end up using them on clan boss and dungeon bosses, things like that, you're going to want to go with War Master. All right, so Giant Slayer is just not one that you're going to tend to use very much unless you have a champion that is focused on, you know, clan boss, something like that, and they have a lot of hits on their A1, then it might be a choice. All right, these other ones here, nothing that great. Helm Smasher, this one can be good, but it's, again, only if you're using them exclusively for arena, because it does have a 50% chance of ignoring 25% of the target's defense. If you're ignoring defense, that can be huge. It can really rip through somebody. But again, that one is very situational, usually only good, really strong, I should say, for arena. That's about it. But these other ones are usually the better options. Last one here. This one is again situational. For certain champions that are really powerful when it comes to certain bonuses, say if you're guaranteed critical hits with a champion with a certain skill, a certain ability, certain criteria that you know is met very often, then it might make sense to go with a bonus crit damage of the plus 20%. But again, it's only if you have a champion that you know is guaranteed to get crits on a certain attack under certain conditions. Otherwise, again, typically War Master for Arena, possibly Giant Slayer, again, depends on the champion. Okay, so we covered the offense branch. Next thing we're going to cover is the defense branch here. All right, and again, typically with Arena, we're going to go with the defense branch. We'll touch on the support at the end, but for now, this is what we're going to tend to focus on. All right, so to start out on the defense, this is pretty much a given at all times. The very first one here, Tough Skin, defense plus 75%. It's a solid addition to your bonus in defense. It's a good bet compared to the second one here, which is resistance plus 10. All right. The problem, resistance is basically inhibits the enemy's ability to put debuffs on your champions. All right. So it can be useful, but the thing is it's situational. If you have a group of enemies that are just focused on doing damage to you more than anything, defense is always a safe bet. If they do have things like stuns and sleeps and weakens and things like that, resistance can be useful, but defense is a safer bet. Defense you will use in every encounter, because ultimately, no matter how many debuffs they're putting on you, they want to get through your defenses. They want to reduce your hit points to 0, and defense is what's going to protect you. So, typically, first one, Tough Skin. All right? Second down the line here. This one is a situational one, blast proof. Decreased damage received from AoE attacks by 5%. All right? This one can help you in Arena. The problem is that it's only a 5% reduction, and it's only for AoE attacks, so it's situational. I have it on this champion simply because I have him for farming campaign, and it's just the best option for him at this point. But I wouldn't suggest it typically in Arena unless you really just don't want to spend anything on any of these, and you want something else to fill. You could reduce the 5%, sure. This is the one that most people are going to end up going with if you have a healer or somebody that places shields on your champions. It increases the amount of healing and the value of shield buffs this champion receives by 5%. All right? That's usually the best bet. Okay, if you don't have a healer or if you don't have shield buffs, then your best bet probably is going to be with this blast proof. All right, as the other ones here really aren't an option. Mighty Endurance decreases damage received by 10%. If this champion has stun, sleep, or freeze, the thing is it's too situational. It's not worth it because you don't know if they're going to have stun, sleep, or freeze. Okay, so with this one here, decreases damage by AoE. Most likely they're going to have AoE attacks. This here, you don't know if they're going to have those. Last one here, improved parry. Okay, this is decrease of damage received by 8% when this champion's hit with a critical hit. This one can be useful. The problem is that, again, remember when you choose something in this one here, in the next tier, you have to choose something adjacent. So I can't pick this one if I've picked Tough Skin here. All right, so it's really usually not an option. It's not worth picking resistance just to get that bonus. All right, so that one's usually just a no either. All right, so moving down the line here, this one here is usually the best option on this one. Shadow Heal heals this champion by 6% of their max hit points each time an enemy is healed. Occurs once per turn. This one here can be great because it doesn't matter how much the enemy's getting healed. Even if they have something that only heals them a very minor amount, anytime they get healed, you are going to get 6% of your max hit points. All right, so that can come in really, really handy in Arena. That one you're going to see more often than the usefulness of these other ones typically, although there is another one that's good too. Now, Resurgent here, though, has a 50% chance to remove one random debuff from this champion when they lose 25% of their max hit points or more from a single enemy skill. All right, now this one Can be useful. You have to figure out how many hit points does your champion have. If they don't have a whole lot of hit points, maybe you're a glass cannon, something like that, where you don't have much hit points, you just hit hard, then this one might make a lot of sense because it does have a chance to remove a random debuff. But again, it's kind of situational because if you know usually you'll get one shot. If you do get hit, then obviously researching isn't going to do you any good. All right, so moving down the line here. We got Bloodthirst. All right. Bloodthirst is heals this champion by 10% of their max hit points when they kill an enemy target, cooldown of 1 turn, which means you can only get the bonus one turn each time, regardless how many you kill. This one here can be great. All right. This one here is definitely one that you want to pick if you know your champion can take out the enemies. Again, if you have a healer or a support champion that doesn't tend to take them out, they don't hit hard, this one isn't going to be the greatest option. But if you have somebody like an attacker or somebody who hits hard, definitely want that one. Absolutely want that one. Okay, last one here. Wisdom of Battle has a 30% chance of placing a block debuffs buff on this champion for 1 turn. Nah, usually the thing is again, it's stun, sleep, or freeze debuffs. It's too conditional, too situational for the most part, not viable. All right, so then moving down the line here. Okay, so keep in mind too though, with Bloodthirst, for this 10%, in order to get it, you would have to pick this. So if you choose this one, you're not going to have this option. So that's why you also got to consider moving down the line here. You usually want to write down the list of what you're going to build with a champion in advance, because you don't want to end up choosing one skill and then later on when you go to pick the next tier, you go, oh, shoot, I wanted this one over here, but I chose this option and I already have 2 over here on offense. And you're not going to have that option. You're going to have to reset. You're only able to reset for free 1 time. After the first time free, you're going to have to start paying gems in order to reset. All right, so you don't want that happening. It can get real expensive resetting. Okay, so with that in mind, moving down the line here. Next, Solidarity. All right, increases ally resist by 5 for each buff placed on them by this champion. All right, this one can be useful if you have champions that place buffs on your other champions. If you don't, Solidarity doesn't make sense. So that's another one that's situational depending on your group. This one here is pretty useful. All right, it's probably the most useful in this other than situational masteries. All right, this one, Delay Death, reduces the damage this champion receives from a specific enemy by 0.75%, which each hit taken from that enemy, it can stack up to 6% for each enemy. It's not much of a damage reduction. It's just on this tier. If you don't need the resistance or you don't have a champion that gives buffs, that's usually going to be a better option. Well, it's obviously going to be the better option because you don't have anything to proc the other one. All right, proc just means to trigger. So in case you don't know that terminology, so learn a little something new there. Now this one, Harvest Despair, has a 60% chance of placing a Leech debuff for 1 turn when placing stun, sleep, or freeze debuffs. Again, this is one that is situational. If you have a champion that does place stun, sleep, or freeze debuffs, then it might make sense to put this on them because Leech can come in really useful. I have a Leech on Inithway. It's an inherent skill of his. With Leech, what Leech does is that every time a champion hits that enemy when they have the Leech debuff on them, it's going to heal that champion for 10% of the damage that they do to them. It's not huge, but it's a little something. And again, with this row, there isn't really anything that spectacular to get. It's situational. If you do get a lot of buffs, then sure, resistance is great. This one here, again, usually it's the best option, the Delayed Death, but it doesn't make much difference. If this one is viable, if you have somebody with the stuns, sleeps, and freeze debuffs, this one would definitely be your best option. Okay, moving along the line here. Stubbornness increases resist by 10 for each debuff, stacks up to 30. The thing is again, this is too situational, and usually you're not going to have the options over here to get to this one. Usually you're going to be picking options over here, so we're not even going to cover that. That's just not that great. It's too situational. Next on the line here, Selfless Defender. Okay, decreases the damage an ally receives from the first enemy hit in each round by 20%. This champion will receive that damage instead. This one here is usually your best bet on this tier, other than the second one in line, which I'll show you in a second. But this one here is great because it's a damage reduction and a 20% damage reduction for specific champions that are healers or play shields and things like that. So this one here, when I say this is usually the best bet, it is again a situational one, but this is the first pick for any champions that you have that have a lot of hit points. They have shields they can place on themselves, they can heal themselves. The champion that is your survivor in the group, that's what you want Selfless Defender on. It is always the first pick for them. If there are other champions that you do want to try to protect, then you could possibly put it on somebody that you feel is more expendable as well, and that can be a great use for this too. Is say if you only have one legendary that's really, really strong and you want to make sure that they survive to get their hits in, then sure, it makes sense to put this on the other champions to protect them. Okay, but again, it really depends. It's kind of situational, but for those circumstances, this is the best option. Second one down the line, and this is the best general option for any champion. Cycle of Revenge has a 50% chance of increasing the turn meter by 15% when an ally is attacked with a critical hit. It will only increase the turn meter once if an ally receives multiple hits. All right, this one here is overall, generally speaking, if you have a champion that's pretty tough, you don't want to place that previous mastery on them because you want them to survive, this is the best bet, okay? Because increasing your turn meter means turns faster. Faster turns means more attacks. More attacks means you have the upper hand, all right? And at 50%, it's pretty good. I'm giving you a 15% boost, all right? The only downside is it does only increase the turn meter once if an enemy gets hit multiple times, but regardless, that's still pretty good, all right? The next one here is, again, another situational one. All right, and this one here, though, can be a really, really good pick, again, depending on the champion. Okay, Retributions has a 50% chance to counterattack when this champion loses 25% of their max hit points or more from an enemy skill. All right, now again, if a champion has tons of hit points, no, this isn't something that makes a whole lot of sense. If you have a champion, though, that is a glass cannon or one that doesn't have a whole lot of hit points, it makes a lot of sense, because a lot of times your champion will lose more than 25% of their max hit points from a single enemy skill. It happens quite a bit in Arena. Like I said, champions get one shot quite a bit. So this one here is the best bet for champions that don't have a ton of hit points. So again, to recap, this one here, Cycle of Revenge, is an all-around good, safe bet for pretty much any champion. And then we have the two situationals decrease. This one here is the best bet for when you want to protect other champions with a champion that is a healer or has shields, things like that. That is the best. This one here is the best for champions that don't have a whole lot of hit points, so that they would be frequently losing more than 25% of their max hit points. All right, this last one here, no. Deterrence has a 20% chance to counterattack an enemy when they apply stun, sleep, or freeze debuff on an ally. No, it's too situational, again, just not viable. All right, now, like I said before, typically you only get one skill on this bottom one. Usually I tell people, that War Master or Giant Slayer. I'm going to give you an exception here, all right? Only exception, going to be number one here. Iron Skin. Defense plus 200, all right? Now, again, this is very situational. If you have a champion that you are only going to be using in Arena, definitely not going to be using them anywhere else, and they benefit substantially from defense, sometimes it makes more sense to do that one than War Master or Giant Slayer. I'm going to show you an example really quick right now. I don't have the champion on this account, but I do have them on my main account, and they are very, very useful. And for this reason that I'm about to show you right now. The champion is Deathless. For those of you not familiar with her, she is amazing in Arena. She is great for being the last survivor. She is a huge threat to the enemy that they do not want to leave standing near the end of the fight. All right. Reason being, A3, Grim Revenge, attacks all enemies. This attack will be critical if there are 2 or more dead allies. Damage increases according to the number of dead allies. The more people die, the stronger this attack gets. This can take out an entire group of enemies in one shot. Okay, now she's a case in point to an exception that I was talking about. A damage for her is based on defense. All 3 of her attacks are based on defense. All right. So with her, it could definitely make sense to go with the option of increasing her defense by 200, because you look at her defense here, it's 1,156. At a bonus 200, that's almost a 25% increase, between 20 to 25% increase in her defense there, all right? And then that, you also have to consider, is going to be added on to whatever other bonuses that she gets from gear, all right? So there is a handful of champions like that. There's also Tyrell. Tyrell is a really great one for clan boss. If you get him, that is something we'll cover in another one though. But regardless, we're going to go ahead and head back to the Masteries now, because I am going to show you one more thing. So, and then another thing when it comes to her as well, since like I showed you in there, she had a guaranteed crit with that particular ability. That's one of those situations where, like I was saying, this is a situational skill, but sometimes it might make sense to go with that crit damage plus 20%, simply because of the fact that she is guaranteed a critical hit with that if 2 or more champions are dead, and she's usually your finisher in the arena. So, but you have to weigh out, do I want a plus 20% for my crit damage, or do I want defense plus 200? Because you have to keep in mind with a champion like her, whose attacks are based on defense, the more defense she has, the harder she will hit, and also the more she's going to protect herself, because the defense will give her both attack as well as protection. All right. So now we've covered all of those, so you know the main ones in offense that you would want to get typically with most champions. You now know the situations where you would want to go with different options because of it, and hopefully now you see why it is that I didn't want to have all these checked off so that you just go, oh, this is what I should get, because depending on the champion, you're going to want to go with different skills, and some of them it might be on the fence. Some of them there might be 2 great skills on this tier over here, but there might also be 2 great skills on this tier over here for them. And then it comes down to using your better judgment. There may not be a huge difference anyway regardless, and if there's multiple viable options on that tier, then great. But you can also always test it too. Test it for quite a while, because there's a lot of RNG in this game, so I would say test it for a couple of weeks, keep track of how that champion does, and then, you know, maybe reset and test out the other one for a couple of weeks. Just remember, you only get 1 free reset. So if you do it, you're going to have to start paying to change those. So make sure that it's something you want to do before you do it. All right. Now, I'm going to cover one more exception when it comes to these skills. Now, like I said, in Arena, you typically want to choose offense and defense. All right. In very, very rare circumstances with a healer or a shield placer, rare circumstance, I'm going to emphasize that, you would want to go with support. All right. So if you don't have anybody who's a really strong healer, they don't place really strong shields, things like that, then you don't even need to watch this. You can go ahead and just stop this right here. You'll be good to go. But if you do have a healer or a shield placer, you really want to consider this one, then, you know, I'm going to run through this very quickly. All right. I'm not going to show you all the skills. I'm just going to show you the ones that you would want to go with and why. All right. And if you're going to choose this one, you would want to still always choose offense and then choose support along with it. All right. And the only exception to things like that is if you have a champion that does not benefit off of attack at all. Again, that would be, say, for example, Deathless, and then you might want the defense along with support, but even with Deathless, you would not choose those two. You would choose offense and defense. Regardless, With support, again, for healers, shield placers, these are the options you'd want to go with. Steadfast, max hit points plus 810. This is especially good for a champion, say like Painkeeper, where their heals are based off of their own hit points. Then sure, you would want to go with support for her because it's going to increase her heals. It makes her more powerful. Even one of her attacks is based off of her hit points, all right? Not going to show you the skills that you would not want in here because, like I said, I'm not a big fan of using support in Arena. I'm just going to show you the only viable options here. So I'm going to go right down to the next tier. Lay on Hands increases the value of heals this champion casts by 5%. All right, so you got to consider this is an Arena. You have 3 other champions. This is more than just 5% because it's 5% for each champion. So you'd basically get an extra 15% heals because it's going to be for 3 other champions and then including herself as well. So really, you're going to get 20% altogether. All right. And that's assuming she heals everyone, including herself. Most champions will, if they're going to heal more than one, it's usually all of them. So these ones are situational again. This is just for people with shields. Okay, Shield Bearer increases the value of shield buffs this champion casts by 5%. Again, it's not huge, but if you have a champion that does an AoE shield buff for all of your champions, then again, that's going to be an increase of 15% for your other champions, 20% including them. So that can be pretty significant. This one here, again, very situational. Heals this champion by 10% of their max hit points the first time an enemy is killed in each round. Okay, now again, if you have a healer, most likely they're going to have a lot of hit points. This one might be a good idea if it's somebody that you know is a survivor in Arena, because each time one of the enemies dies, it's going to give them 10 hit points. And it is the first time, though, an enemy is killed in each round. So keep that in mind as well. So you're not going to be getting tons of heals left and right. It's the first time an enemy is killed in each round. Remember that. Okay? But it can be a really good option to top somebody's hit points off some. All right, moving down the line here. This is the only one we're going to look at here because this is the only one that makes sense. Healing Savior increases the amount of healing and the value of shield buffs placed by this champion by 10% if the target ally has 40% hit points or less. All right, now a lot of times in Arena fights don't tend to last very long. Your champion, but being the odds of your champion being between 1% and 40% hit points in the Arena is meh at best. All right, it's a gamble, but again, in this tier, it is really your only viable option. I'm not even going to look at the other ones because you should not be choosing them. Next down the line, Merciful Aid. This one here increases the amount of healing and the value of shield buffs placed by this champion by 15% if the target ally has a stun, sleep, or freeze debuffs. All right, now again, this one should be the main one that you would pick out of this tier. It's usually the best option because, again, you should be having somebody with healer or shields. If you don't, then they probably don't belong in support for Arena to begin with. All right, so... and this is for if they have a stun, sleep, or freeze, it gives an extra 15%. That can make the difference between a win or a lose. The only other one that you would consider on this tier here would be Cycle of Magic. This one has a 5% chance of decreasing the cooldown of a random skill by 1 turn at the start of every turn. All right, the thing is the odds are very slim. It's only a 5% chance. So basically you're looking at 1 in every 20 turns that this might happen, because again, 5%, which means 5 out of 100, 1 out of 20. All right, it's not that great of odds, but that can make a huge difference if you have a healer or somebody who places shields, and this does proc, which again, proc means trigger, and that can make the difference as well. But for the most part, very situational. I don't think you should be choosing that one. Going down the line, both of these ones are kind of situational. Lasting Gifts has a 30% chance to extend the duration of any buff cast by this champion by 1 turn. Remember, it will not extend block damage, unkillable, or revive on death buffs. Those are very, very powerful buffs. It doesn't extend them for a reason. Okay, it would just be too unfair. However, this is, again, situational. If you have a champion that has continuous heals. So say for 2 turns, they do 15% heals, okay? This could be really good because that would increase the amount of healing they do by 50% if this does trigger, all right? Because you'd get 1 extra turn, so rather than 2 turns, you'd get 3, all right? So this one for those types of people could be great, but it's only if it's a buff that sits on your champions. If it's not a buffer, then no. A heal is immediate, so it wouldn't, unless it's a continuous heal, all right? Next one here is, again, very situational. Spirit Haste. Increases speed by 8 for each dead ally, stacks up to 24, all right? Reason this is situational is the only time this would make sense is to put on one of your survivors. If you know this champion is going to tend to outlive your other champions, then this could be a viable option. Otherwise, for the most part, you're not going to go with this one. All right. Now, again, I can't emphasize this enough. I'm going to say it one last time. Typically, you'd want to go with War Master or Giant Slayer just because of how viable they are throughout all different kinds of encounters. But, if you have a champion that you know you are only going to use for Arena, their main focus is healing, or they have skills and abilities that are based off of their hit points, the one and only time you would ever want to look at this tier, Elixir of Life, max hit points plus 3,000. Okay, again, the only times you would ever be considering this one is if you have a champion that heals based off of their own hit points, or their attacks are based off of their hit points, possibly something along those lines where they have a great deal of benefit from their hit points. Otherwise, this one does not make sense. All right. So that about covers it. If you guys have any questions, be sure to let me know. I'm going to go ahead and post the offense and the defense trees up here. I might even post the support here, just in case you have a situational champion that you think would benefit from that. But again, remember, you typically want to go with the offense and defense trees. That's usually the best bet for at least 95% of all champions. All right. So again, you got all the trees here. You see the list, and if you have any questions, drop it down in the comments. I'll do my best to answer any questions you guys have. Otherwise, best of luck in the arena. Maybe I'll see you in there in the game. Otherwise, good luck, guys, and catch you in the next video. Hi guys, this is Anthony here, also known on this channel as AscendantGod. Wanted to thank you for checking out my channel here. Really appreciate it. Be sure to check out the other videos. I got plenty of goodies on here. Also check out the description sections in the videos. Got plenty of links on there for real different kinds of goodies that I think would be worthwhile for you guys. If there is something in particular that you don't see on my channel that you want to see, be sure to let me know in the comment section as well. And I think that's about it. All I've got. I'm just gonna get back to this thing here. I'm pretty sure if I just
We have such sights to show you.
Wow, that's really funny. Same here.